Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya. Prabhupada Jagacharya, Officer of AC, Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Namachara Haridasa Thakur Ki Jai, Prem Sakahal Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Sri Advaita Gadadhar Saraswati Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Sri Sri Radha Krishna Gova Gopita Shama Kunda Radha Kata Giri Govardhan Ki Jai, Sri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai, Navadap Dham Ki Jai, Bhyang Shimana Tulsi Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Ananda Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai, Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Go Premanandi. All glories to some of the devotees, all glories to some of the devotees, all glories to some of the devotees, all glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishnapadaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pachadane Nirvashesha Shunyavani Paschatchadeshatadane Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Sri Vasudeva Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 72, Verse 6. Na Brahmana Swapara Beda Matis Tavasyat Sarva Mana Samadrasha Swasukanu Bhute Samsevatam Suratoror Iva Te Prasada Sevano Rupa Mudayo Navi Parya Yotra. not Brahmana, of the absolute truth, Swa, of own, Para, and others, Veda, differential, Mati, mentality, Tava, of you, Syat, there can be, Sarva, of all beings, Atmana, of the soul, Sama, equal, Drsha, whose vision, Sva, within himself, Sukha, of happiness, Anubhute, whose experience, Sam Sevatam, for those who properly worship, Surataro, of the heavenly tree, desire tree, Iva, as if, Te, your, Prasada, grace, Seva, with the service, Anurupam, in accordance, Udaya, desirable results, Na, not, Viparyaya, contradiction, Atra, in this. Translation: within your mind there can be no such differentiation as this one is mine and that is another's, because you are the supreme absolute truth, the soul of all beings, always equipoised and enjoying transcendental happiness within yourself. Just like the heavenly desire tree, you bless all who properly worship you, granting their desired fruits in proportion to the service they render you. There's nothing wrong in this. Purport: Sridhar Swami explains that the desire tree has no material attachments or partiality, but simply bestows its fruit upon those who deserve them and not upon others. Jiva Goswami Prabhupada adds that a desire tree does not think this person is fit to worship, but that other person is not. Rather, a desire tree is satisfied with all who properly serve it. And the Lord acts in the same way as explained here by King Yudhisthira. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti adds that no one should accuse Lord Krishna of being envious of one person and showing favoritism toward another. Since the Lord as Sukha Anubhuti experiences his own happiness within himself, he has nothing to gain or lose in relation to conditioned souls. Rather, he reciprocates according to how they approach him. Srila Prabhupada very nicely sums up this point as follows in its rendering of King Yudhisthira's statement. If one takes to Krishna consciousness, his life becomes fulfilled both materially and spiritually. This does not mean that you are partial to the Krishna conscious person and indifferent to the non-Krishna conscious person. You are equal to everyone. That is your declaration. You cannot be partial to one and not interested in others, because you are sitting in everyone's heart as the super soul and giving everyone the respective results of his fruitive activities. You give every living entity the chance to enjoy this material world as he desires. As a super soul, you are sitting in the body along with the living entity, giving him the results of his own actions, as well as opportunities to turn toward your devotional service by developing Krishna consciousness. You openly declare that one should surrender unto you, giving up all other engagements, and that you will take charge of him, giving him relief from the reactions of all sins. You are like the desire tree in the heavenly planets, which awards benediction according to one's desires. Everyone is free to achieve the highest perfection, but if one does not so desire, then your awarding of lesser benedictions is not due to partiality. Translation: within your mind there could be no such differentiation as this one is mine, that is another's, because you are the supreme absolute truth, the soul of all beings, always equipoised and enjoying transcendental happiness within yourself, just like the heavenly desire tree You bless all with who properly worship you, granting their desired fruits in proportion to the service they render you. There is nothing wrong with this. So here Yudhisthira again is praising the Lord. In the previous verse, he indicated that he wanted to illustrate through the Rajasuya sacrifice the power of devotional service. If one worships the Lord, then one gets the highest benefit. So that's the power of bhakti. So in this verse, he expands upon that position of the Lord responding to the bhakti. So he gives the example of the desire tree. So the Lord is like the desire tree, and according to the person, qualification of the person who approaches that tree, they get results from the tree. At the same time, the tree does not discriminate based on some material reasons and refuse to give to one person but give to another for some irrational reason. Therefore, the Yudhisthira is here praising the Lord because if one approaches the Lord, then he responds. But we should not think that the response is equal to everyone. The sinner approaches the Lord, then he gets the same result as the devotee. Obviously, that would be unjust. That would mean all the sinners would go to the Lord and do all sorts of violent activities, surrender to the Lord and say, I get the same results as the devotee. So everyone would be sinful then. So irrationally being equal to everyone and rewarding the criminals and not the devotees, that would also be wrong. So equality does not mean that the Lord treats everybody in exactly the same way and gives them the same results for whatever they do. Obviously, that doesn't look very good. So, no, the Lord gives results according to the qualification of the person. And in that, he doesn't make any distinction. The person is qualified, then he gives. And he doesn't look at whether he's rich or poor or whatever like that. That's not the qualification. So there is qualification. According to that, the Lord gives some results. But it is not irrational also. So, of course, the Lord also says, though I am equal to everybody, I have great attraction for my devotee. So therefore, we can say that the equality actually is, let's say, in accordance with the amount of devotion. So someone has no devotion, the Lord responds in one way. If there's a little devotion, the Lord responds to that. If there's great devotion, the Lord responds to that. And he responds more, obviously. But to the person who has no devotion, also it's not that he doesn't give any response. But it is much less than he gives to those who have great devotion. So, of course, the response desired by the individual person also has to be considered. So those who have no attraction to the Lord, what they would desire is only material things. Those who have some devotion would have mixed desires. Those who have pure devotion would only want service to the Lord. So the Lord also responds to that. According to the desire, the Lord gives. If they only want material things, the Lord gives them material things. If they want a mixture, the Lord gives a mixture. If they want pure bhakti, the Lord gives that. So according to the desire also, the Lord responds. If we were not to respond according to the desires and give something completely different, that would also be rather irrational. You ask for one thing, you get something else. So it's not fulfilling your desire in any way. It's a desire tree, so yeah, your desires have to be fulfilled. So he gives according to the desire. He gives according to the qualification of the person as well. So someone may desire something, but if he's unqualified, he doesn't get a great amount. Another person desires the same thing, but he's more qualified. The Lord gives more. He gives a good result for him. So factors are to be considered when we talk about the Lord being equal to everyone. So we can say the Lord is just to everyone, and according to qualification, according to the desire, the Lord gives a particular result. So, of course, the desire tree and the Lord are a little different. The tree is a tree, and the Lord is the Supreme Lord. And even if the desire tree is a spiritual desire tree in the spiritual world, still the Lord is even greater than that, because He is Supreme Lord. So He's kind of like a desire tree, but actually much more than a desire tree. He can give much more than whatever the tree could give. So, in the same way, we give the example of the Lord being Chintamani stone. Same thing. The Chintamani stone also gives everything. Similarly, the Lord gives everything. He can give prema, He can give liberation, or He can give material benedictions of any sort. So, yes, the Lord can give everything, and He gives what a person desires, and according to qualification. But then again, sometimes the desires are done in ignorance, and therefore the Lord is a little reluctant to immediately supply those material things to a person, because He knows it's ultimately unbeneficial for the person. So the Lord may not completely respond to the desires of the individual. And that is especially so when one begins the process of bhakti. Because the Lord is more concerned about the devotee's advancement, then He may not give something which is detrimental to that person's advancement. So a person may want material things. The Lord may not give those material things if the Lord knows that it will become an obstacle for his bhakti. So we have some adjustment to this idea of the Lord gives anything you want. Nevertheless, we also see that the Lord is famous for fulfilling the desires of the jivas. This is stated in the Upanishads. The Lord is the one who fulfills all the desires of the jivas. He is sitting in the heart, and He fulfills the desires. So the jiva on his own can do nothing. He is not independent. He is dependent on the Lord. So the Lord gives him strength, ability, intelligence, helps his senses and his body operate so that he can fulfill his desires in the material world. So, these desires, of course, may not be the best desires. They may be also detrimental to him. The Lord fulfills those desires, but according to the law of karma. So again, it's not that the living entity wants anything, he gets anything. And the Lord, as Paramatma, simply supplies everything to him. No. He will get according to the law of karma, qualification. So there the Lord doesn't really interfere. He's the maker of the law of karma, and then He fulfills the desires according to the law of karma. So they may want something, but the law of karma restricts that jiva from certain amount of enjoyment. He can only get a certain amount. So therefore, the Lord helps the jiva attain within that limitation. So in this way, the Lord fulfills the desires of the jivas in the material world. With the devotees, however, because the Lord has special attraction for the devotee, and He's attracted to, or He's concerned about his advancement, then the Lord this doesn't leave everything up to the law of karma anymore.
And in fact, we see that when you perform bhakti, the law of karma disappears. So in one sense, no restrictions. But then the Lord, He makes a judgment of what is beneficial for the jiva or what is not beneficial for the jiva. So though the law of karma doesn't work, the Lord Himself makes His decision to how much He wants to give to that particular devotee in terms of material benefits or whatever, seeing that something may be detrimental or something may be advantageous to him. So therefore the Lord decides at that point for what is good for the devotee. So therefore, though the Lord is a desire tree, that desire, as a desire tree, He gives in a certain way, in one way for the non-devotees and another way for the devotees. And definitely He doesn't just give everything they want. It is subject to some control, some limitations. If a devotee has prema, the devotee then has no fault at all, so there is no danger, because whatever the devotee desires is all in relation to Krishna, and there's no possibility that his desire, the fulfillment of his desires, would interfere with his bhakti at all. So therefore, in one sense, a devotee in prema, he gets the full results of the desire tree. The Lord gives everything to him, whatever he wants. But that devotee only wants things which will aid his service to the Supreme Lord. And so the Lord supplies all those different things. So that is why the jiva gets a spiritual body, so that he can serve the Lord. If we don't have a body, how can we serve the Lord, who also has a body? So we get a particular body. And then again, according to the particular rasa, the body is slightly different. It may be female, may be male, may be old, may be young, whatever, according to the particular rasa with the Supreme Lord. Then we get a particular type of body to serve. So because the desire of the jiva, then the Lord fulfills that by making certain arrangements for him. So in this way, the Lord fills the desire of the devotee in the highest level with great facilities, spiritual facilities, to help him in his service. And in that body, then he gives senses. So we have eye, we have ear, we have nose, we have hands, we have feet, etc. And with those senses, we're able to perceive the Lord and experience the Lord. So generally, the devotees get a human form in the spiritual world rather than animal or plant form. Why? Because human form has all these senses developed, and he can appreciate the Lord with all of his senses quite easily. So therefore, in the spiritual world, it is easier, we can say it's more natural, that the human form appreciates Krishna and serves him in the best possible way, and of course communicates on the same level as Krishna. Whereas if it's animal or plant, they cannot communicate in the same way. Animals cannot speak, and the cows can move, but they can't they can't carry out a conversation. So they're limited in their expression of love for the Lord. Whereas the human being, then they have great variety of expression, particularly because of their higher intelligence. So therefore, the Lord supplies everything to the jiva and prema so that he can perform his service nicely. So therefore the Lord is the desire tree, and he responds to everyone. So Yudhishthira is praising the Lord because of this. He responds to everyone, and he can do this because he's Supreme Lord. He knows everyone, he recognizes everyone, he's in everyone. He witnesses everything. He's all-powerful. He can supply anything. So it is very easy for the Lord to do this. But it is all done, as I said, on different levels. For the non-devotees in one way, for the devotees in another way, and according to the devotee again, in different amounts. And all that is perfect. According to the particular devotee, he responds in a certain way at a certain time. And that is most beneficial for that devotee. So, Yudhisthira is on the highest level as a devotee. And therefore he can experience this directly, how the Lord responds very nicely to everything. Now, within that experience, however, we get pastimes. And in those pastimes, there may look like obstacles, as with the Pandavas. They lost the kingdom, they had to fight the war, etc. like this. So many things that look like obstacles to and why the Lord doesn't interfere. He could have just killed all the Kurus immediately, all the demons, and then from the very beginning, Pandavas could live in the palace nicely. There'd be no Kurukshetra war, nothing would happen. Certainly the Lord could do that. But the Lord has his particular plan within his pastimes. So the devotee does not complain. So the Pandavas do not complain about their position, even though it looks as if they're not getting mercy at certain points. No, they understand this is the plan of the Lord, and they patiently wait. And finally, of course, they understand the intentions of the Lord, whatever. So Yudhisthira always understands that the Krishna's plan is the best. And because they are his servants and devotees, therefore they're under his protection at all times. And so their devotion yields the best results in all cases, even though it may take some time for that to mature. So in this case, the plan is to have a Rajasuya sacrifice, and through that, Yudhisthira wants to show that if one is a devotee of the Lord, one gets all results. So therefore, devotion to Krishna is the best thing. It's the solution to everyone's problem. Unfortunately, not all people accepted that. So we see that when they had the Rajasuya sacrifice, Duryodhana was envious, Shishupala was envious, all these other people were envious. They said, why worship Krishna? They didn't want to accept that. Why the Pandavas get this position? So in spite of the demonstration, and in spite of the fact that Krishna himself killed Shishupala then right in front of everyone's eyes, still we have demons who cannot accept what Yudhisthira is trying to demonstrate here, the power of bhakti and the power of the Supreme Lord. So some people are blind in this material world. But even then, the Lord does not hate them, whatever. And they do get results. Some result is given by the Lord according to their position, qualification, etc. In the case of Shishupala, he went to Vaikuntha. So, and we see the other Kurus ultimately were killed, and they go to Svargaloka or wherever. And so, the Lord makes arrangements for everyone, and he doesn't hate anybody. But those who recognize the Lord and perform bhakti are much more glorious in the results that they get. So therefore the Pandavas are in a much better position than the other Kurus.
Despite the case of Dhruva Maharaj, initially he wanted a bigger kingdom for his father. And later he said, I don't want. But still the Lord gave it. Like a son is asking, Father, give me a knife. Father is still giving his knife. Why the Lord has to give him the mental benediction? He wanted spiritual benediction.
Well, the Lord may not give if it interferes with one's devotion or whatever like that. In the case of Dhruva, he started out with mixed bhakti. Then when he saw the Lord, he didn't want anything, so he had developed pure bhakti. So the Lord judged, one, that if I give him the kingdom, he is not going to be contaminated, so therefore why not? And he asked for it in the beginning. So therefore, I should also fulfill that desire. So in this case, the desire he fulfilled because he knew that it would not interfere with the devotion of Dhruva. And that was so because later on he went to Dhruva, he got a whole planet for himself also. Then later on he goes to Vaikuntha. So there was not an obstacle for him. Rather, it was a glorification of his devotion, that he was so devoted, and he followed Narada Muni's instructions very nicely, that he got not only spiritual result of seeing the Lord, but he also got material result. So this also demonstrates that if you worship the Lord does not necessarily take away everything material. He may give everything material. And so that's the case of that. We see in the Pandava's case also.
One mentioned that Lord decides for his devotees' upliftment. Lord is designing. Sometimes we find devotees asking other devotees, please pray for my girl, please pray for my father. Mm-hmm. That may be interfering in the Lord's design. They might just not leave it. Lord will design and decide.
Well, if people pray for other devotees, no problem there. Actually, it even says, like in Hari Bhakti Vilas, you can do your ekadasi on the behalf of somebody else, and they get the benefit. So to a certain degree, we can influence others or give them the benefit of our bhakti. In fact, the parents get the benefit if the children become devotees. Even if the parents don't become devotees, still the parents get some result because the child became a devotee. So bhakti is so powerful that it carries its influence to others as well, even if they don't do the bhakti.
But this may get repeated. They may not do any devotional service. They'll be depending on other devotees.
Yeah.
They won't share with them. Please do for me.
Yeah. So they get some result. Of course, it's not so strong, but they get some benefit. Just as I said, if one becomes a devotee, then 21 generations in the future get the benefit. It's not that they all become pure devotees, but at least they get some agata sukriti or whatever, so they can develop. So it's not the highest level, but they get some advantage. So similarly, they do the Shraddha rites for a person after they die. So that is to absolve them of their sins. Obviously, you cannot completely get free of your sins, to do all sinful activity, expecting your child to do the Shraddha rites, and then you're free from hell. That doesn't work either. But it helps to some degree that they get some relief from whatever they've done. It doesn't completely absolve them, so they're still responsible. But if the relatives do something, it also influences to some degree.
You also mentioned that for karmis, not devotees, karma acts. Then the karmis will ask, why should I pray? And karma act accordingly.
Well, yeah, you can ask to do that, yes. And therefore, if you're intelligent, then you will avoid sinful activities and you'll do punyas. So that's, for non-devotees, that's what Krishna wants. And by doing that, they come to Sattva Gun. When they come to Sattva Gun, they become detached. And then they realize, I'm not the body, I'm the soul. So if they want to follow the law of karma, fine. But most people don't even know the law of karma. They just do their sinful activities. So that's even a worse position.
Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Sarvasya Chaho. So these are the cause, remembrance, forgetfulness, and knowledge. That being the case, how some souls are given the opportunity to remember him and some others not.
Yeah, so that's according to the Lord obviously gives Shakti to the Jiva so he can be conscious, so that he can do activities, etc. in general, like that. And then Krishna also says, I give you the intelligence by which you can come to me. So he also supplies that. So who does he choose to give intelligence so that they can do bhakti? Well, they should have faith, shraddha. Where do they get the faith from? Mercy of devotees.
Faith itself is coming from Krishna only.
Ultimately, through the devotees.
So how some soul can be held responsible that they are not getting it?
If they're in the material world and they're simply doing sinful activities, then they're responsible for those sinful activities. They get covered over and they get ignorance, etc. And then it's very difficult for them, even if they get the mercy, to advance. If they do less sinful activities, it's easier for them to advance. Definitely, in any case, whether you're sinful or not sinful, mercy is there and some effect. But a person who's less sinful can take advantage of that more, and like say, he can develop faith much easier.
In case of a devotee, the Lord thinks that certain things persons are going to be hindrance for social service. He doesn't sanction that. So how to understand the free will of that? I didn't get that.
When he gets...
Okay, he's practicing devotional service and he has some desires, but God does not sanction because that's going to be an impediment for devotional service.
Yeah.
So what happens to the independence of the jiva at that point? Because it's God's independence is taking over the jiva's independence.
No, the jiva still has a desire for something. It's just like in the material world, the jiva desires something. He can't get everything because of the law of karma. So to that extent, he's not completely independent and every desire is automatically fulfilled. So that's so for every single jiva. They're not completely independent. So for the non-devotee, the law of karma operates. And that puts a restriction on his independence. For the devotee, again, he's not completely independent. Again, he's ultimately dependent on the Supreme Lord. And his desires, again, are limited by the will of the Supreme Lord. Personally, in that case, not by the law of karma. But in terms of how to advance in devotional service.
Is it not difficult to understand that, what the devotees are expecting from the Lord, that when Lord doesn't fulfill that desire? I think it's difficult to understand that why Lord is not giving. Why is only Lord only knows, and why He's not giving.
Yeah, so the Lord will give in different ways. To a person who's less advanced, then He will give things. The arta-arti and the arti approach to the Lord. Then the Lord gives because they're expecting, and then that increases their faith. For one is more advanced who wants material things, and he may not do the same thing because he knows that even if he doesn't give, that person will not lose his faith. Yeah? So it's according to the individual also that the Lord may give or may not give. For those who are less advanced, yes, the Lord generally gives.
As you understand from Bharat Maharaj past times that even a little inattention causes revolt in one's spiritual life. But for the sadhaka, after he has the knowledge that the two devotions are to make, but somehow still he gets so much attracted to so many aspects of the material life. Why is it how to work with that?
How does the devotee?
He knows that the little inattention is causing havoc, as in the case of Bharat Maharaj.
Yeah. Well, if the devotee has got less bhakti and more material desires, then that's what takes place. And when the bhakti is stronger and the material and artas and desires are less, then it's less likely to take place. But as long as there are some contaminations there, then there's possibility of inattention or carelessness or material desire cropping up, as long as some material trace is there. But it's less likely the more one advances.
I think Bhaktivinoda he mentioned one thing like, he said that there is an abdu living entity has this sweetness of the heart. Mm-hmm. So this sweetness of the heart might work when all the devotees knows that what he is doing is right or wrong, mm-hmm. But this sweetness of the heart it works. He mentioned one of the
yeah, that's an arta. Yeah.
You have seen this, that when Pandavas went to forest, they took it as a Lord's sanction. They didn't complain anything. But when they came back, when they didn't get the kingdom back, they went for war. So they could have taken it as a Lord's mercy, but yet they went for war.
Yeah, because the Lord said fight. And that was also his desire, like in Bhagavad Gita. Yeah, you can do whatever you want, but actually, you can be my instrument and fight for me.
But that's come later. Before war, there are so many.
Well, they tried to avoid the war, and Krishna also tried to avoid the war as well. He went on behalf of the Pandavas to plead with them, don't have the war, just give them 5 villages, etc., etc. So even Krishna didn't want the war. But because of the other side, then it became inevitable. They were forced into that position to support Dharma.
One of the second end of the verse is the samadrisha. Means he sees everyone equally. Correct. But you see, for the devotees, he has a different. He sees different to the devotees. Non-devotees sees different. Samadrisha.
Yeah.
Equally. So how to understand this?
Well, in any case, he was equal or just. If we can say that the judge is equal, it doesn't mean that everybody gets free. Everyone's innocent. He doesn't say that. The judge is equal, then the criminal should be innocent, and the innocent should be innocent. So then he has no job at all. Everybody's equal, everybody's innocent. If that a judge is sama doesn't mean he makes everybody innocent, even if they're guilty. So sama doesn't mean that for the Lord also. Sinful people are sinful. And they get the results of their karma. But the judge, yes, he judges people, but ideally he is not supposed to interfere with the law. According to the law, the result will be given to the person, and not with the judge's favor. I like the person, therefore we're going to change the law for him. So then it's unequal. But he's equal because he lets the law operate, and he doesn't interfere with it, even if the person is friend. If he's enemy, he doesn't make the law worse and give him more punishment, etc. So in that sense, the judge is sama.
But he does interfere with the devotees, but when devotees take up the devotional process.
Yeah. So, according to the devotee then, and the amount of devotion, then the Lord responds to that. So for people in the material world, yes, let the law of karma operate. But then, if a person has affection for the Lord cannot say, I'm sama, so I'm not going to respond. That would also be not proper. So, if one has affection for the Lord should respond equally. So, according to your affection, the Lord responds. In that sense, he is sama.
When you say that the soul is eternal and there is no beginning and end, beginning for the soul, there is no choice for the soul at the beginning to start with, whether it should go for a devotional service or for meditation.
Well, there is no beginning.
Otherwise, how it will get bound?
Huh?
How it gets bound in samsara itself?
There's no beginning. There's no beginning. Anadi Bahirmukha.
So then only Lord's wish, certain souls get the opportunity to have the intelligence and the
mercy of devotees. Yeah. Which is there from the beginning of time. Brahma's a devotee. He gives mercy. Narada Muni is there from the beginning. He gives mercy. Great sages are there from the beginning. Every day of Brahma, avatars come. Devotees are there. Manus are there. 14 times in a day they have descendants propagating.
Narada and the Kumaras, they refuse to take up to samsara.
What's that?
Narada and the Kumaras, they refuse to take up to samsara.
They're avatars of the Lord. Shaktivesh avatars.
Always want to get a job done with higher, they go to secretary or PA and influence. Can we say that even in spiritual world, we go to the Guru and just ask him to pray for us? We should just have the middle world. If we want to get a job done from a higher source, we go to a PA or through some.
Well, of course, it is like that. They do have, like Radha's the highest, and then there are other groups of gopis. They have leaders of each group, and they consult the leader when they want to do anything. So they have some hierarchy there also. But of course, it's not material. It's all related to pastimes of Krishna.
But who maintains all these databases?
They don't need, because intelligence is perfect there. In the spiritual world, there's no ignorance. Of course, there's the Shaktis of the Lord, the Yoga Maya, Leela Shakti, etc. That make arrangements so that everything goes on perfectly.
Often people ask that why Muslim devotees, when Muslims attacked UP, Uttar Pradesh, many Vrindavan, many Brajavasis got killed. They didn't do any mistake. Why Lord didn't protect them?
We don't know what their karmas were, particular karmas for those particular people. They're not all, highest pure devotees or whatever. We don't know. So we can't judge that.